A millionaire filed for divorce after years of marriage and abandoned his ex-wife. 8 months after the divorce, the millionaire appeared at a restaurant with his new wife. On the other side, a waitress was serving tables while pregnant. It was his ex-wife. The divorce made her completely change her life and seek a new beginning. Follow this story of overcoming adversity until the end. The chandelier's crystal fragments scattered light across the polished mahogany tables of Elysium, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. Every surface gleamed with promise and privilege. Waiters glided between tables with practiced precision, their movements nearly invisible to the wealthy patrons, absorbed in their own importance. Olivia Bennet kept her eyes down as she balanced 3 plates along her forearm. 8 months as a server had taught her the art of invisibility. The black uniform, crisp white shirt, fitted vest, and slim pants was a far cry from the designer clothes that once filled her closet, but it served its purpose. It hid her 5-month pregnancy well enough, at least for now. "Table 12 needs their check," Marcus, the floor manager, murmured as he passed. Olivia nodded, sliding the plates onto a nearby table with a practiced smile. "Enjoy your meal." Her customers barely looked up. In this world, servers were furniture, necessary but unremarkable. This reality no longer stung as it once had. After all, Olivia had mastered the art of becoming unremarkable by choice. She was halfway to the register when she heard it. A laugh, deep, confident, unmistakable, that stopped her cold. The sound traveled across the restaurant like a physical force, slicing through the ambient noise. Olivia's hand instinctively went to her stomach, a protective gesture she'd developed over the past months. She didn't need to turn around to know. After 7 years of marriage, some things became imprinted on your soul. "The 95 Bordeaux, please," the voice commanded. "We're celebrating tonight." Olivia forced herself to breathe. In the reflection of a nearby mirror, she caught a glimpse. Alexander Reed in an impeccably tailored navy suit, his dark hair showing distinguished touches of silver at the temples. Beside him sat a woman Olivia recognized from society pages and whispered rumors. Vanessa Hargrove, daughter of one of New York's banking dynasties. On her finger gleamed a diamond that captured and refracted the chandelier's light, announcing their engagement to anyone who cared to notice. 8 months. That's all it had taken for Alex to rebuild his life, while hers had collapsed around her. "Bennett, you okay?" Marcus appeared at her side, a concerned furrow between his brows. "Fine," she replied automatically. "Just a little lightheaded." "You sure you should be working doubles in your condition?" His genuine concern almost broke through her composure. "Almost. I'm fine," she repeated more firmly this time. "Table 12, right?" She moved toward the register, deliberately taking a path that would keep her out of Alex's line of sight. The pregnancy remained her secret, one she'd discovered mere days after signing the divorce papers. By then, Alex had made it clear their marriage had been a mistake. A youthful impulse he'd outgrown as Reed Architectural Group expanded internationally. The architecture firm had been their shared dream once. They'd met in graduate school at Columbia, both brilliant, ambitious, with complementary visions. While Alex had the family connections and inherited wealth, Olivia had the innovative designs that won competitions and turned heads. Together they'd created something remarkable, until she became expendable. The division of assets had been swift and clinical. The prenup she'd signed, young and blindly in love, ensured Alex retained control of the firm. Her contributions were legally invisible. She'd walked away with a modest settlement she'd refused to touch out of pride, determination, and perhaps a touch of madness. Then came the swift, systematic erasure of her professional identity. Former clients suddenly became unavailable. Calls went unreturned. Her name, once celebrated in architectural journals, vanished from conversations. The pregnancy's morning sickness had coincided with the realization that she'd been blacklisted. Olivia delivered the check to table 12, smiling mechanically at the tourists who would overtip to prove they belonged in a place like this, as E. She turned. She caught a flash of Alex's profile, the strong jawline, the confident tilt of his head as he explained something to his companion. Vanessa leaned forward, captivated, playing her role perfectly in this performance of success. "Looks like Mr. Reed is back," said Sophia, another server, as they passed in the service corridor. With the new model upgrade, Olivia managed a non-committal noise. "Isn't he your ex?" Sophia persisted, her eyes wide with the excitement of proximity to drama. "God, that must be awkward." "Ancient history," Olivia replied, busying herself with organizing receipts. "Well, he just requested private dining room service, champagne and the chef's tasting menu. Must be nice to drop $2,000 on dinner without blinking." For a moment, bitter memories threatened to surface. Celebrations. At this very restaurant, Alex ordering champagne to toast her awards, their shared achievements. The future had seemed limitless then. "Olivia," Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts. "Private room 2 needs service. Carolina called in sick." Her stomach dropped. "Can't Sophia—" "Reed specifically requested our most experienced server." Marcus looked apologetic. "I didn't make the connection until just now. If you want, I can tell him you're not available." The offer hung between them. It would be so easy to hide, to maintain the fragile barrier between her past and present. But something hardened in Olivia's chest. Not pride exactly, but a refusal to be diminished further. "No," she said quietly. "I'll do it." Marcus studied her face. "You sure? The guy's a regular high roller, but that doesn't mean you have to." "It's fine," she interrupted. "Really?" As Olivia gathered the wine list and made her way toward the private dining room, she straightened her posture. The baby shifted inside her, a reminder of why she endured this, of the future she was fighting to build from the wreckage of her past. She knocked lightly on the door before entering. The private room was intimate, with just one table surrounded by handcrafted wooden paneling and soft lighting designed to flatter everyone within its embrace. Alex looked up, the practiced smile freezing on his face as recognition dawned. For one unguarded moment, shock registered in his eyes, followed swiftly by something unreadable. "Good evening," Olivia said, her voice steady and professional. "Welcome to Elysium. I'll be your server tonight." Vanessa glanced between them, confusion evident in her perfect features. "Olivia," Alex recovered quickly, his tone carefully modulated. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Life is full of surprises," she replied evenly, handing them each a menu. "May I start you with some champagne? I understand you're celebrating tonight." Alex stared at her, clearly struggling to reconcile. The poised woman in a server's uniform with the acclaimed architect, who had once shared his bed, his name, and his dreams. "Yes," Vanessa interjected, either oblivious to the tension or choosing to ignore it. "We are celebrating our engagement. The champagne would be lovely, wouldn't it, darling?" "Of course," Alex replied, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "Dom Perignon Rosé." "Excellent choice," Olivia said, her professional mask firmly in place. "I'll return shortly with your champagne and to discuss the chef's recommendations." As she turned to leave, Alex spoke again, his voice lower. "Olivia, I had no idea you were working here. If I'd known, you'd have chosen another restaurant?" She kept her back to him, her hand on the doorknob. "Don't worry, Mr. Reed. Your evening won't be disturbed." She closed the door behind her and leaned against the wall, one hand pressed against her stomach. The baby kicked as if sensing her distress. 8 months ago, she'd signed away her rights to the life they'd built together, refusing to fight for what she'd helped create. Tonight, faced with the reality of Alex's new beginning, she questioned that decision for the first time. But as the baby moved again beneath her palm, Olivia straightened. Whatever mistakes she'd made in the past, whatever injustices she'd suffered, her future, their future, was still unwritten. And if serving champagne to her ex-husband and his new fiancée was a step on that path, so be it. She would serve them with impeccable professionalism. And tomorrow she would continue searching for a way back to the career that had been stolen from her. Because the one thing Alex had never understood was that Olivia Bennett didn't need his name or connections to be extraordinary. She simply needed the chance to prove it again. With steady hands, she selected the champagne and arranged 2 crystal flutes on a silver tray, preparing to return to the room where her past and present collided in ways she could never have imagined. Time crawled as Olivia served Alex and Vanessa through their 5-course meal. Each trip to their private dining room was an exercise in composure, balancing plates, wine glasses, and dignity with practiced precision. If Alex's eyes lingered too long on her movement, if questions formed at the edge of his lips only to be swallowed back, Olivia pretended not to notice. "The lobster bisque is a house specialty," she explained, setting down 2 artfully presented bowls. "Chef Hammond sources the shellfish exclusively from Maine's Casco Bay." "Fascinating," Vanessa replied with practiced interest, though her gaze was assessing Olivia more carefully now. "Have you worked here long?" "Long enough to know the menu intimately," Olivia deflected. "Would you care for more wine?" Alex cleared his throat. "Olivia is a brilliant architect," he said, addressing Vanessa but watching for Olivia's reaction. "One of the most innovative minds in sustainable urban design." The use of present tense wasn't lost on Olivia. A small kindness, perhaps, or merely a slip of the tongue. "Really?" Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched. "How interesting. What brought you from architecture to—" She gestured vaguely at the restaurant. "Life changes," Olivia said simply. "Will there be anything else for now?" But Alex wasn't ready to let the moment pass. "I still see your influence in every project at Reed. The Westlake development especially. We've maintained the green corridor concept you pioneered." "How thoughtful," Olivia replied, her tone neutral, "though I believe my name was removed from those plans shortly after the divorce." The words hung in the air, undeniable and sharp. Alex had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That wasn't my decision. The board—" "Enjoy your soup," Olivia interjected smoothly. "I'll return shortly." In the kitchen, she pressed a cool towel to her forehead. 6 more months of this, she thought. 6 more months of scraping by on tips and minimum wage until the baby arrived. Then what? Her savings were dwindling faster than anticipated. The small apartment in Brooklyn that had seemed like a temporary setback now loomed as a potential long-term reality. "You okay, Bennett?" Marcus appeared at her side, concern evident in his voice. "I'm fine," she replied automatically. "You don't look fine. That guy's got you rattled." He lowered his voice. "Want me to spill something on his fancy suit? I've got a nice red wine that would do the trick." The offer, ridiculous as it was, made her smile. "Thanks, but no, I've got this. Your tables are covered for the next 15. Take a break." Olivia nodded gratefully and slipped out the back door into the alley behind the restaurant. The cool September air was a relief after the kitchen's heat. She leaned against the brick wall, closing her eyes. "Your talent is wasted here." "The" voice startled her. Olivia's eyes flew open to see a woman standing a few feet away, elegant in a tailored charcoal pantsuit that screamed old money. Her silver hair was cut in a sleek bob, and sharp eyes assessed Olivia with unnerving directness. "Excuse me," Olivia straightened, immediately defensive. "Eleanor Rothwell." The woman extended a hand. "And you're Olivia Bennett? Or was it Reed? I can never keep track of what women do with their names these days." "Bennett," Olivia replied automatically, shaking the offered hand. The name was vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. "I was at table 6, Eleanor continued. "The salmon was overcooked, by the way, but that's hardly your concern." "I can speak to the chef. Don't bother. I'm more interested in why the architect who designed the award-winning Barrett Foundation Eco Center is serving me mediocre fish." Realization dawned. "You're Eleanor Rothwell of the Rothwell Foundation." "The very same." Her smile was quick and calculating. "Your vertical garden concept for urban food deserts caught my attention 3 years ago. I've followed your work since then, until it mysteriously stopped 8 months ago." Olivia felt suddenly exposed. "I'm taking a break from architecture." Clearly. Eleanor's gaze dropped briefly to Olivia's midsection, then back to her face. "And serving overcooked salmon to philanthropists like me is part of your master plan to return to design." The directness was both offensive and refreshing. "My circumstances are complicated." "Circumstances are always complicated, Ms. Bennett. Solutions, however, can be surprisingly straightforward." Eleanor reached into her purse and extracted a business card. "The Rothwell Foundation is launching a new initiative in sustainable architecture. We're partnering with MIT on a fellowship program focused on climate adaptation in urban centers." She held out the card. Olivia stared at it, but didn't take it. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because our first fellow just dropped out to take a lucrative position with a development firm in Dubai. We need a replacement by next month, and I've never believed in coincidences." Eleanor's eyes were sharp. "The position includes a stipend, housing allowance, and full access to MIT's resources." "In Boston," Olivia stated, her mind racing. "Indeed. Far enough from New York to constitute a fresh start, I'd imagine." "Does this say?" Opportunity was tantalizing, precisely what she'd been searching for since the divorce, yet suspicion prickled at the back of her neck. "Did Alex put you up to this?" Eleanor's laugh was genuine. "My dear, Alexander Reed and I have been at odds since he bulldozed historical properties in South Boston for that monstrosity he calls innovative mixed-use development. This is not charity or pity, it's pragmatism. I need someone with vision, and you need an escape route." She placed the card in Olivia's hand. "The interview is a formality. Call my assistant tomorrow, we'll arrange everything." Before Olivia could respond, Eleanor turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Ms. Bennett, the fellowship includes comprehensive health insurance, effective immediately." Her gaze flickered briefly to Olivia's stomach. "Prenatal care in Massachusetts is excellent, I'm told." With that, she disappeared around the corner, leaving Olivia clutching the embossed card like a lifeline. When she returned to the private dining room, Alex and Vanessa were deep in conversation, their heads bent close together. They separated slightly as she entered, and Olivia caught the tail end of Vanessa's words. "Can't believe she's pregnant." Alex's expression confirmed what Olivia had suspected. Her condition wasn't as well concealed by her uniform as she'd hoped. Something flashed in his eyes as she approached, calculation perhaps, or concern. "Your main courses will be out shortly," Olivia said, pretending she hadn't heard. "Can I bring you anything else in the meantime?" "Olivia," Alex began, his voice carefully controlled. "We should talk." "I'm working, Mr. Reed." "After your shift, then." His tone was both commanding and pleading. "There are things we need to discuss." The business card seemed to burn in her pocket. Eleanor Rothwell's offer represented a future Olivia had thought lost, a chance to reclaim her professional identity and provide for her child. Boston was less than 4 hours away, but it might as well have been another planet compared to the suffocating reality of New York, where Alex's influence permeated every architectural firm worth joining. "Actually," she said, meeting his gaze, "directly, there's nothing to discuss. Our business was concluded 8 months ago." "Things have changed," he insisted, glancing meaningfully at her stomach. "Yes, they have." Olivia felt a strange calm settling over her, but not in ways that concern you. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps I should give you two a moment." "That won't be necessary," Olivia said firmly. "I'll send your server with dessert. Miss news shortly, if you'll excuse me." As she turned to leave, Alex called after her. "Olivia, wait, is it—" He stopped, seemingly unable to form the question. She paused at the door, one hand on her stomach. For a moment, she considered telling him the truth, that yes, the child she carried was his, that their brief reconciliation the night before he asked for a divorce had consequences neither had anticipated. But what would that accomplish now? He had made his choice 8 months ago, choosing his company's expansion and his new relationship over their marriage. "Enjoy the rest of your meal," she said instead, and closed the door behind her. In the service corridor, Olivia leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. The encounter had left her shaken but also strangely empowered. For months she'd been reacting to circumstances beyond her control, the divorce, the pregnancy, the professional blacklisting. Tonight, for the first time, she felt the stirrings of agency. Boston, a fellowship, a new beginning. She pulled, Out Eleanor's card, tracing the embossed lettering with her fingertip. The opportunity seemed too perfect, too precisely timed to be coincidence. Yet Eleanor Rothwell's reputation for identifying and nurturing architectural talent was well known. Perhaps this was exactly what it appeared to be, a chance encounter that could change everything. By the time Olivia returned with dessert menus, Alex and Vanessa were speaking in tense, hushed tones that ceased abruptly when she entered. Alex looked troubled, running a hand through his hair, a gesture Olivia recognized from countless late nights working on designs together when a solution eluded him. "We'll skip dessert," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Just the check, please." As Olivia processed their payment, she could feel the weight of her decisions settling around her. Boston represented not just escape, but possibility, the chance to rebuild her career and create a life for her child far from Alex's shadow. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something unfamiliar unfurling in her chest. Hope. When she returned with the receipt, Alex signed it without looking at the total. His pen hesitated over the tip line before he wrote an amount that made Olivia's eyes widen slightly. "Consider it a long overdue acknowledgement," he said quietly, sliding the leather folio back to her. "Your work was always worth more than you were paid." The gesture, meant to be generous, only highlighted the fundamental imbalance that had ultimately destroyed their marriage. Even now, he saw their relationship in terms of transactions, debts and payments, gains and losses. "Goodbye, Alex," she said simply. He stood buttoning his jacket with the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to being in control. "This isn't goodbye, Olivia. We need to talk about the baby." "No," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "We don't. I've made my decision." Something like panic flashed across his face. "You can't just—" "I can," she interrupted. "And I have. Enjoy your evening." As she walked away, Olivia felt Alex's gaze following her, but she didn't look back. The weight of Eleanor Rothwell's business card in her pocket balanced the weight of the child growing within her, twin promises of a future that, for the first time in 8 months, seemed not just possible, but within reach. That night, in her small Brooklyn apartment, Olivia sat by the window overlooking the distant Manhattan skyline. The city that had once represented her greatest ambitions now felt like a beautiful trap she was finally preparing to escape. She placed a hand on her growing belly, feeling the gentle movements of her child. "Boston," she whispered, testing the word. "What do you think, little one? Ready for an adventure?" In answer, the baby kicked, strong and decisive. Olivia smiled. Tomorrow she would call Eleanor Rothwell's assistant. Tomorrow she would begin the process of rebuilding her life on her own terms. And for the first time since signing those divorce papers 8 months ago, tomorrow didn't seem quite so frightening. Boston in February was brutal. Wind whipped between buildings, carrying stinging snow that bit at any exposed skin. Olivia pulled her scarf tighter as she hurried across MIT's campus, one hand protectively curved around her very prominent belly. At 8 months pregnant, every journey felt like an expedition, but she refused to miss today's presentation. 4 months had passed since she'd left New York, accepting Eleanor Rothwell's offer and embracing the uncertainty of a new beginning. The transition hadn't been easy. Her small university-affiliated apartment was functional but sterile, lacking the character of her Brooklyn space. The fellowship stipend covered essentials but left little room for luxuries, and while her colleagues respected her professionally, making genuine connections proved challenging, especially as her pregnancy advanced. Yet despite these obstacles, Olivia had flourished. Freed from Alex's shadow and the toxic New York architecture scene, her creativity had reignited. Her current project, a revolutionary approach to flood-resistant coastal housing, had already attracted attention from sustainability journals and climate change non-profits. "Bennett, wait up!" Olivia turned to see Dr. James Hargrove, her faculty advisor, jogging toward her. In his 60s, with a perpetual bow tie and rumpled tweed, James had become an unexpected ally, offering mentorship without condescension, support without pity. "You're walking entirely too fast for someone about to deliver a basketball," he chided, falling into step beside her. "Committee meeting starts in 10 minutes, she reminded him. "And this baby isn't due for another 3 weeks. "Babies rarely consult calendars," James observed dryly. "Are you ready for today?" "As ready as I'll ever be." Today's presentation to the Rothwell Foundation's board would determine whether her coastal housing design moved forward to the prototype phase. Success meant expanded funding, academic recognition, and, most importantly, professional redemption. "The trustees will love it," James assured her. "Your design solves problems no one else is even addressing yet." They reached the Richard B. Sanders Building, where architecture faculty offices and conference rooms occupied the upper floors. As they entered the elevator, Olivia felt her phone vibrate. She glanced at the screen and frowned. Alex. Again. Since learning of her pregnancy and relocation to Boston, he'd been persistent, calling, texting, even sending emails to her university account. Each message followed the same pattern: assertions of his legal rights, reminders of their history, thinly veiled threats about custody battles to come. She silenced the phone and slipped it back into her pocket. Whatever Alex wanted would have to wait. The boardroom was already half full when they arrived, a mix of Rothwell Foundation trustees and MIT faculty arranged around a polished mahogany table. Eleanor Rothwell sat at the head, elegant as ever in a tailored burgundy suit, her silver bob gleaming under the recessed lighting. "Ah, Miss Bennett," Eleanor said, glancing up from her tablet. "Right on time. How are you feeling?" "Ready to present," Olivia replied with a confident smile, setting up her materials at the podium. A flurry of activity at the door drew everyone's attention. A latecomer entered, a distinguished man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Something about him struck Olivia as familiar, though she couldn't immediately place him. "Richard, thank you for joining us," Eleanor said. "May I introduce Olivia Bennett, our fellowship recipient. Olivia, this is Richard Hargrove, one of our newest board members." Hargrove. The name registered immediately. Olivia maintained her professional smile even as her mind made the connection. Richard Hargrove, Vanessa's father, the banking dynasty Alex had been so eager to align himself with through marriage. "Pleased to meet you," Richard said, his handshake firm and his gaze assessing. If he recognized her name from his daughter's relationship, he gave no indication. Likewise, Olivia managed, her heart racing. Was this coincidence or something more calculated? Before she could contemplate further, Eleanor called the meeting to order. Ms. Bennett will present her design for climate-adaptive coastal housing, followed by questions from the board. Ms. Bennett, whenever you're ready. Drawing a steadying breath, Olivia activated the digital display. The familiar rhythm of presenting architectural concepts overtook her nervousness. She guided the board through her vision: modular homes built on adjustable platforms that could rise with floodwaters, integrated renewable energy systems, community spaces designed to foster resilience during climate emergencies. The key, innovation, she explained, highlighting a cross-section of the foundation system, is the amphibious architecture approach. Rather than fighting rising sea levels, these structures adapt to them, floating during floods and returning to ground position as waters recede. As she spoke, Olivia noticed Richard Hargrove leaning forward, his interest evident. He asked several pointed questions about structural integrity and scalability, challenging but fair inquiries that allowed her to showcase her technical knowledge. When the presentation concluded, the response was overwhelmingly positive. The board authorized immediate funding for a prototype, with construction to begin in 3 months. It was everything Olivia had hoped for: professional validation, project advancement, and a clear path forward. As the meeting adjourned, Eleanor approached, her expression pleased. "Excellent work, Olivia. This is precisely the innovative thinking we hope to foster through the fellowship." "Thank you for the opportunity," Olivia replied sincerely. "This project means everything to me." "I'm rather good at spotting talent," Eleanor said with a small smile, "even when it's serving overcooked salmon." Before Olivia could respond, Richard Hargrove joined them. "Remarkable presentation, Ms. Bennett. Your approach to climate adaptation is genuinely groundbreaking." "Thank you, Mr. Hargrove." "Richard, please." He studied her with undisguised curiosity. "Your name seems familiar. Have you published previously?" The question seemed innocent enough, but something in his tone suggested otherwise. Olivia considered her response carefully. "Yes, I've contributed to several journals on sustainable urban design, and I was formerly with Reed Architectural Group in New York." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Ah, of course. Reed. My daughter's fiancé speaks highly of the firm." "How nice," Olivia replied neutrally. Richard's gaze dropped briefly to her stomach before returning to her face. "I understand congratulations are in order on multiple fronts." The implication hung in the air. Eleanor, sensing tension, smoothly intervened. "Richard, I believe we have another appointment. Olivia will be in touch about next steps for the prototype." As they departed, James sidled up beside her. "Well, that was interesting. Care to explain why Richard Hargrove was looking at you like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve?" "It's complicated," Olivia sighed, gathering her materials. "Most worthwhile things are," James replied. "Coffee, we should celebrate your win." "Tea for me," she corrected, patting her belly. "But yes, I'd like that." As they headed toward the campus coffee shop, Olivia's phone vibrated again. This time, instead of Alex's name, an unknown Boston number appeared. Frowning, she answered. "Ms. Bennett? This is Dr. Patel from Massachusetts General Hospital. Your test results came back, and I'd like you to come in as soon as possible." The doctor's voice was professionally calm, but something in her tone sent a chill through Olivia. "Is something wrong with the baby? We should discuss this in person. How soon can you get here?" James, noting her expression, immediately flagged down a passing taxi. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical terminology and concerned faces. Preeclampsia, a pregnancy complication characterized by high blood pressure and potential organ damage. Immediate bed rest required. Possible early delivery if her condition worsened. "The baby is at risk?" Olivia asked, struggling to process the information. "Both of you are," Dr. Patel explained gently. "Which is why we need to monitor you closely. I'm admitting you today." "But my project," Olivia began. "We'll have to wait," the doctor interrupted firmly. "Right now your priority needs to be your health and your baby's." James, who had waited loyally in the corridor, drove her home to collect essentials before returning to the hospital. As Olivia packed a small bag, reality sank in. Her triumph at the board meeting now seemed distant and hollow compared to the immediate crisis of her health. "Do you want me to contact anyone?" James asked as he helped her back to the car. "Family? Friends?" Olivia thought about her parents. In Seattle, her few friends scattered across the country, and the colleagues she'd only just begun to know. None seemed like the right person to call in this moment of vulnerability. "No," she decided, "but could you let Eleanor know? The prototype schedule might need adjustment." "To hell with the prototype," James said gruffly. "Eleanor will understand. Your job now is to rest and get better." At the hospital, Olivia was settled into a monitoring room. Machines tracked her blood pressure and the baby's heartbeat, creating a rhythmic backdrop to her racing thoughts. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but clear about the risks. Complete bed rest, constant monitoring, possible early delivery if her condition deteriorated. Days blended together, marked only by medical checkups and the steadily increasing anxiety about her unborn child. James visited daily, bringing work, materials, so she could continue refining her designs from bed. Eleanor called regularly, assuring her that the project timeline would adapt to her medical needs. On the 5th day, a nurse entered with an unusually serious expression. "Ms. Bennett, you have a visitor." "Who?" Olivia began, but her question was answered as Alex stepped into the room. He looked different from their encounter at Elysium, tired, uncharacteristically rumpled, his confident demeanor replaced by evident concern. For a moment, neither spoke. "How did you find me?" Olivia finally asked. "Richard Hargrove mentioned running into you at MIT. Alex moved further into the room, his gaze taking in the medical equipment, her pallor, the monitors tracking vital signs. When you stopped answering calls, I got worried. I contacted hospitals until I found you. I'm fine, she said automatically. Clearly, he replied, gesturing to the hospital bed and monitoring equipment. What's happening? Is the baby... The baby stable? She interrupted. Preeclampsia. They're watching us both. Alex sank into the visitor's chair, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Why didn't you tell me you were in the hospital? Why would I? The question wasn't accusatory, merely honest. We're divorced, Alex. You're engaged to someone else. Because it's my child, too. His voice was quiet but intense. Isn't it? The question hung between them. For months, Olivia had maintained her silence, protecting this one piece of information as if it were her last defense against complete vulnerability. Yes, she finally admitted, but that doesn't change anything. It changes everything. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. When you disappeared from New York, I thought you were just avoiding me. Then Vanessa's father mentioned seeing you at MIT. Pregnant, brilliant, building a new life without me. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Probably similar to how I felt watching you build a new life without me 8 months ago, she countered. Alex flinched. I deserved that. But Liv, you have to understand... I don't have to understand anything, she interrupted, her voice steady despite the emotions churning beneath. I'm not keeping secrets out of spite, Alex. I'm making choices for my future, our future, she added, placing a hand on her stomach. And where do I fit into that future? He asked. Before Olivia could answer, alarms suddenly blared from the monitoring equipment. Her blood pressure had spiked dangerously. Medical staff rushed in, pushing Alex aside as they worked to stabilize her condition. The last thing Olivia remembered before losing consciousness was the doctor's urgent voice. We need to deliver this baby now. She awoke hours later in recovery, momentarily disoriented until memory flooded back. Her hands flew to her stomach, now noticeably flatter. Panic surged through her body. The baby, she whispered, her throat dry and voice raspy. Your daughter is in the NICU, came a gentle voice beside her. Olivia turned to see Dr. Patel checking her vitals. She's small, just over 4 pounds, but she's fighting. You both gave us quite a scare. A daughter, Olivia repeated, tears filling her eyes. Is she okay? Can I see her? As soon as you're stable enough to move, the doctor promised. The emergency C-section went well, but your blood pressure is still concerning. We need to monitor you closely for the next 24 hours. Alex, Olivia began, then stopped, unsure what she was even asking. Mr. Reed is waiting outside, Dr. Patel confirmed. He hasn't left since they brought you into surgery. Do you want to see him? Did she? The question seemed impossibly complex. Their last conversation had been interrupted by her medical emergency, leaving so much unresolved. Yet something had shifted inside Olivia. Perhaps the reality of their daughter's premature arrival had reframed priorities she'd thought fixed. Yes, she decided finally. But first, tell me more about our daughter. Dr. Patel's expression softened. She's beautiful. Strong lungs for her size, a good sign. The NICU team is optimistic, though she'll likely stay there for several weeks while she gains weight and strength. When Alex entered a few minutes later, the tension between them had transformed into something more complex than animosity. He approached her bedside cautiously, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. You look terrible, Olivia observed, her voice still weak. A small smile touched his lips. Always the charmer, Liv. Have you seen her? The question felt enormous. Alex nodded, emotion tightening his features. She's perfect. Tiny, but perfect. I haven't even held her yet, Olivia whispered, unexpected tears spilling down her cheeks. He reached for her hand, and for once she didn't pull away. You will. She's waiting for you. They've got her in this little clear box with monitors and tubes, but all I could see was how much she looks like you. The simple observation broke something open inside Olivia, the careful wall she'd constructed to protect herself from needing or wanting Alex in her life. For the first time in nearly a year, they weren't adversaries or exes or even co-parents. They were just two people united by the miracle and terror of their daughter's fragile beginning. "What happens now?" she asked, not quite meeting his eyes. "Now you rest and get stronger," he replied firmly. "And I'm staying in Boston until both of you are out of the hospital." "And Vanessa?" Alex's expression shifted. "That's complicated, but not something you need to worry about right now." Before Olivia could press further, Dr. Patel returned with a wheelchair. "If you're feeling up to it, I think it's time you met your daughter properly." The NICU was quiet except for the gentle beeping of monitors and the occasional soft voice of a nurse. Alex walked beside Olivia's wheelchair as they approached the incubator where their daughter lay. Impossibly small, with delicate tubes and sensors attached to her tiny body. "Hello, little one," Olivia whispered, reaching through the opening to gently touch her daughter's hand. 5 perfect miniature fingers instantly curled around her index finger. The connection was electric, profound, transformative. "She needs a name," Alex said softly. Olivia looked up at him, seeing not the man who had broken her heart, but the father of this miraculous being they'd created together. Emma, she decided, Emma Grace Bennett. She'd deliberately chosen her own surname, a small declaration of independence even in this moment of connection. If Alex noticed, he didn't comment, simply nodding in agreement. "Emma," he repeated, testing the name. "It suits her." As they sat together beside their daughter's incubator, the complicated reality of their situation temporarily receded. There would be difficult conversations ahead, legal considerations, co-parenting arrangements to negotiate. But for now there was only this: 3 lives intertwined in ways that transcended contracts and careers. 3 years passed like the turning of seasons, distinct phases flowing one into another, marked by challenges and triumphs that transformed the landscape of Olivia's life. Boston had become home, a place of rebuilding and unexpected joy. The city's historic charm and forward-thinking energy matched her own evolution, honoring the past while embracing new possibilities. Emma thrived despite her precarious beginning. At 3, she was a whirlwind of curly dark hair and precocious observations, with Olivia's creative intuition and Alex's analytical precision already evident in her personality. The arrangement they'd negotiated after her birth had evolved organically. Alex maintained his primary residence in New York, but kept an apartment in Boston, spending long weekends and holidays with them. It wasn't the family structure Olivia had once envisioned, but it worked. Co-parenting across state lines required flexibility and communication, qualities that had been sorely lacking in their marriage, but grew stronger with each passing month. "Mommy, look!" Emma called from the living room floor of their Cambridge apartment, where she was constructing an elaborate structure from wooden blocks and cardboard tubes. "I made a environment-friendly building, like yours." Olivia smiled, setting aside the presentation she'd been reviewing. "Environmental," she corrected gently. "It's beautiful, sweetie. Tell me about it." "It has sun catchers on the roof," Emma explained seriously, pointing to colored paper circles. "And water collection for the gardens, and special windows for birds to see so they don't bump their heads." "Bird-safe glass," Olivia nodded, recognizing features from her own designs that she'd obviously absorbed. Very smart thinking. The intercom buzzed, and Emma abandoned her creation, racing to the door. "Daddy's here." "Wait for me," Olivia cautioned, following at a more measured pace. She checked the security screen before buzzing Alex up, using the moments before his arrival to assess her appearance. Casual weekend attire of jeans and a soft sweater, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. No longer needing to armor herself for these interactions was perhaps the most significant sign of their progress. When Alex entered, Emma launched herself into his arms with delighted squeals. He caught her effortlessly, spinning her in a circle, before setting her down and producing a small gift-wrapped package from his coat pocket. "What's this?" Olivia asked with mock severity. "We talked about excessive presents." "It's not for her," Alex replied with a grin. "It's for you." The admission caught her off guard. They'd established clear boundaries: birthday and Christmas. Gifts for Emma. occasional necessary items shared between households, but personal gifts remained firmly outside their carefully negotiated parameters. "Me? Open it," he urged, seemingly enjoying her confusion. Inside the small box lay a custom-made lapel pin, a miniature version of the coastal housing prototype she'd designed, now under construction along the Massachusetts shoreline. The IT detail was exquisite, capturing the innovative floating foundation and solar arrays that had become her professional signature. "The Architectural Sustainability Association is presenting you with their Innovation Award next month," Alex explained, watching her reaction. "The ceremony is in New York. I'm on the selection committee this year, but recused myself from your nomination." "You won unanimously, Liv." Olivia stared at the pin, emotions battling within her. The ASA Innovation Award was among the most prestigious recognitions in sustainable architecture, one she'd dreamed of since graduate school. That Alex had been part of making it happen stirred complex feelings she'd thought safely resolved. "Thank you," she managed finally. "This means a lot." Emma tugged at her father's hand. "Can we show Daddy my buildings?" "Absolutely," Alex replied, allowing himself to be led to the living room. As Emma excitedly explained her creations, he listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he took her ideas seriously. Watching them, Olivia felt a familiar tug, not the painful longing of early separation, but something more nuanced. The past 3 years had healed many wounds, but they'd also illuminated what had been lost, not just a marriage, but a partnership, that when functioning at its best, had produced something greater than either could achieve alone. Later, after Emma had been tucked into bed with stories from both parents, a cherished ritual when Alex visited, they sat in the living room with glasses of wine, reviewing logistics for the coming month. "So you'll bring Emma to New York for the ceremony?" Alex confirmed, making notes in his phone calendar. "Yes, though we'll need to discuss accommodations. Hotels are expensive, and with the fellowship ending next month." "Stay at the penthouse," he suggested. "I'll be in Chicago that week for the lakefront project. You'll have the place to yourself." The idea of returning to the home they'd once shared sent an unexpected shiver through Olivia. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." Alex looked up, studying her expression. "It's just practical, Liv. 3 bedrooms, doorman building, Emma's old nursery is still set up." "You never redecorated." The question slipped out before she could stop it. A shadow crossed his face. "Some things I couldn't bring myself to change." The admission hung between them, laden with unspoken history. 3 years of co-parenting had established a fragile peace, but certain topics remained carefully avoided. Vanessa's abrupt departure 6 months after Emma's birth, the professional struggles Reed Architectural had faced in Olivia's absence, the relationships they'd each tentatively explored with others. "Things worked out with the Rothwell Foundation?" he asked, changing the subject. Olivia nodded, grateful for the shift. "They've offered to fund the next phase of the coastal housing project, 3 additional sites along the eastern seaboard, with construction beginning next spring." "That's incredible." His admiration was genuine. "The Reed Group actually bid on the Rhode Island location, but I'm glad we lost to you. Your design is revolutionary." "Thank you," she said simply. "How are things at the firm?" Alex swirled the wine in his glass. "Challenging. We lost the Bryant contract last quarter. The board is pushing for more conventional projects, reliable revenue streams rather than innovation." "That doesn't sound like you." "It isn't," he admitted, "which is part of why I wanted to talk to you tonight. The firm's at a crossroads, Liv. We need to evolve or slowly become irrelevant." Something in his tone alerted her. And I've been following your work. The integration of climate adaptation principles, the community-centered approach, it's exactly the direction architecture needs to move." "Alex," she began cautiously, "if you're asking for my blessing to incorporate similar elements in Reed projects—" "I'm asking you to come back," he interrupted. "Not as an employee, as a partner. Equal stake, your name on the door. Reed and Bennett Architectural Group." The proposal landed like a thunderclap. Olivia set her wineglass down carefully, buying time to process what he was suggesting. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious." Alex leaned forward, passion animating his features. The industry is changing, Liv. Sustainability isn't just a buzzword anymore, it's essential. Your work in Boston has positioned you at the forefront of that movement. Combined with Reed's resources and client base, we could transform how buildings respond to climate change on a global scale. And us, Olivia challenged. What about our history? We've managed to co-parent across state lines for 3 years, he pointed out. We communicate better now than we ever did during our marriage. I'm not suggesting we pretend the past didn't happen, but I am suggesting we could build something meaningful from where we are now. The proposition was both terrifying and tantalizing. Return to New York, to the world that had once rejected her, but this time on her own terms. Work alongside the man who had broken her heart, but who had also undeniably helped her create the most precious thing in her life. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course. Alex stood, gathering his coat. The offer stands regardless of your decision about the award ceremony. No pressure, no strings attached. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. For what it's worth, Liv, watching you rebuild your career has been inspiring. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of what you've accomplished. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Thank you. That means more than I expected it to. After he left, Olivia sat in the quiet apartment, Alex's proposal turning in her mind like a complex architectural model, revealing different angles and possibilities with each rotation. Going back to New York had never been part of her plan. Boston represented fresh beginnings, professional autonomy, a life defined by her choices rather than her marriage. Yet something about his offer resonated with ambitions she'd set aside, dreams, of influencing architectural practice on a larger scale, of merging innovation with implementation in ways that could address climate challenges meaningfully. The decision crystallized gradually over the following weeks. Conversations with Eleanor Rothwell, whose mentorship had evolved into friendship. Discussions with James, who reminded her that career choices should be based on future potential rather than past grievances. Most importantly, quiet moments with Emma, whose existence was proof that beautiful things could emerge from complicated beginnings. By the time Olivia stood at the podium in New York's Architectural Center, accepting the Innovation Award, before a room filled with the industry's elite, her path forward had become clear. Alex sat in the front row beside Emma, their daughter dressed in a miniature version of Olivia's professional attire, beaming with pride she couldn't possibly understand, but felt nonetheless. Architecture has always been about problem-solving. Olivia began her acceptance speech. But the problems we face today, climate disruption, resource scarcity, social inequity, require solutions that transcend traditional approaches. The Coastal Housing Project represents not just technological innovation, but a philosophical shift in how we conceive of human habitation, in harmony with natural systems. Her gaze swept across the audience, recognizing faces that had once been allies, then adversaries, and now watched her with renewed respect. This award honors not just a design, but a journey. 3 years ago, I faced professional extinction and personal upheaval. Today I stand before you transformed by those challenges, rather than diminished by them. She paused, looking directly at Alex. Sometimes creation requires demolition first. What matters is what we choose to build from the cleared ground. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Olivia barely heard it. She was already looking toward the future, a future that would bring her full circle back to New York, but as a different woman than the one who had left. The reception afterward was a whirlwind of congratulations and networking, former colleagues approaching with newfound admiration, potential clients eager to discuss her innovations, architecture students seeking mentorship. Through it all, Alex remained respectfully distant, giving her space to reclaim this professional territory on her own terms. It was nearly midnight when Olivia finally returned to the penthouse apartment. Emma had long since fallen asleep, the babysitter Alex arranged, reporting that father and daughter had enjoyed their evening together before he left for a late business meeting. Olivia moved through the familiar space, memories echoing in every room. The penthouse had been their first major purchase together, a symbol of their shared success. Now it felt like a museum of their former life, preserved but no longer living. She found herself drawn to the home office, where Alex's current projects would be displayed. The wall-mounted screens were dark, but the large drafting table was illuminated by a single lamp, blueprints carefully arranged beneath paperweights. Curious, Olivia approached, expecting to see the Chicago lakefront development he'd mentioned. Instead, she found preliminary sketches for the Reed Building renovation, the company headquarters they'd designed together in the early days of their marriage. The new plans maintained the original structure's elegant lines, but integrated elements unmistakably inspired by her recent work: rooftop gardens, rainwater collection systems, passive solar features. In the margins, Alex had written questions, ideas, alternatives, leaving space for another perspective. For her perspective, a note was attached to the corner. Whether you accept the partnership or not, your vision deserves to shape this building's future. A. The gesture spoke volumes, acknowledgement of her contribution to the firm's past success, respect for her current expertise, an invitation to collaborate regardless of her decision about his offer. Olivia traced the familiar curves of the building's facade, remembering late nights spent refining those very lines, the excitement of watching their shared vision rise from paper to reality. The Reed Building had been their first major success together. Its renovation could represent something equally significant, not a return to the past, but a thoughtful integration of what had been with what could be. The following morning she called Eleanor Rothwell from the balcony of the penthouse Manhattan spread before her in the clear spring light. "I've made my decision," Olivia said without preamble. "I'm accepting Alex's partnership offer, but with conditions. The Rothwell Foundation projects remain under my direct supervision, and I want to establish a scholarship program for women in sustainable architecture." "Bold move," Eleanor commented, her tone neutral. "Are you certain it's the right one?" "No," Olivia admitted, "but I'm certain it's not the wrong one. The work matters, Eleanor, and we can accomplish more together than separately." "And personally?" the older woman pressed. "That's considerably more complicated territory." Olivia watched Emma in the living room, building towers with the same blocks that had once belonged to her father. "We're not the same people we were 4 years ago. I'm not going back to anything. I'm moving forward with clearer boundaries and stronger foundations." "Well," Eleanor said finally, "Boston's loss is New York's gain. Keep in touch, Olivia. The foundation will want updates on those coastal projects." "Always," Olivia promised. When Alex arrived that evening to take them to dinner, she met him in the foyer with confident poise. Emma raced ahead to the elevator, excited about the promised visit to her favorite pizza place. "I've been thinking about your offer," Olivia began. "And?" His expression was carefully neutral, though tension showed in the set of his shoulders. "Reed and Bennett Architectural Group," she said, testing the name. "Equal partnership, separate creative control over our respective projects, joint oversight of firm direction." Hope flickered in his eyes. "Those terms are acceptable." "I have additional conditions," she continued. "First, we maintain separate residences, at least initially. Second, we establish clear boundaries between our professional and co-parenting relationships. Third, we both commit to complete transparency about the firm's operations, no decisions affecting both of us made unilaterally." "Agreed," Alex said without hesitation. "Anything else?" Olivia smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "Yes, we acknowledge that this is an experiment. If it doesn't work professionally, we find an exit strategy that protects both our interests and Emma's stability." "And if it does work?" he asked quietly. "Then we build something remarkable," she replied, simply, one day at a time. As they joined Emma at the elevator, Olivia felt a peculiar sense of completion, not the closing of a circle, but the beginning of a spiral, carrying forward the best elements of their past while creating space for new possibilities to unfold. 4 years ago, watching Alex walk away with divorce papers signed had felt like an ending. Today, standing beside him as co-parents, soon-to-be business partners, and two people with a complex, evolving connection, she recognized it for what it truly was: a necessary transition in a story still being written. The future held no guarantees. Partnership, whether personal or professional, never did. But Olivia Bennet was no longer afraid of uncertainty. She had weathered storms that should have destroyed her, and instead emerged stronger, wiser, more authentically herself. Whatever came next, she would face it, standing firmly on foundations of her own design. Emma reached up, taking each of their hands in hers as the elevator descended. In that simple gesture, Olivia saw their shared creation, not just a child, but a new kind of family forged through challenge rather than convention. Not broken, as she had once feared, but differently whole. "Ready?" Alex asked as the doors opened to the lobby. Olivia met his gaze, seeing in it respect, admiration, and the comfortable familiarity of shared history. "Ready," she confirmed, stepping forward into the next chapter of their story. Outside, New York awaited, the city that had witnessed her greatest triumphs and most painful defeats, now offering a fresh canvas for reinvention. Not as the woman who had left in wounded retreat, but as an architect in every sense of the word. Designing buildings, yes, but also mindfully constructing a life on her own terms. The evening light caught the Innovation Award pin on her lapel, a glinting reminder of how far she had come, from serving meals in a restaurant while pregnant and alone, to standing as an equal beside the man who had once discarded her. Life's symmetry had its own elegant architecture, foundations, load-bearing walls, and open spaces, allowing room to breathe and grow. Olivia smiled as Emma skipped ahead, chattering excitedly about pizza toppings and a new building she wanted to design when they got home. Some structures collapsed under pressure. Others, built with greater care and stronger materials, could withstand any storm. She had become the latter, and whatever the future held, she would remain unshakable. Fimda Historia. Did this journey, through Olivia's path from heartbreak to triumph, resonate with you? Her architectural designs weren't the only things being rebuilt. She was constructing a new life, brick by emotional brick. For more stories that explore resilience and reinvention, click the subscribe button to your left. Every day we bring you carefully crafted narratives that reveal the complexity and beauty of the human experience. If Olivia and Alex's complicated relationship struck a chord, leave us a comment below sharing your thoughts. And don't forget to like this video to help us continue building these emotional journeys together. More captivating stories await. Will you join us for the next one?